Good afternoon. My name is Jason Cabot. I'm here with the world famous Lewis Cabot, and this is the Nothing to Prove podcast. It's a men's discussion forum, and we generally talk about topics such as men's health and just kind of relationships and different things. But we thought we would have a conversation today, and I feel like you're the perfect person to have it with. And conversations that I have with a lot of men, and that's in regards to the topics of like ancient technology and ancient aliens and secret knowledge and those type of things. So yes, I'm extremely excited about this. And so I thought we would just get right into it, man. So
Hey, is this really just for men? I mean, that women can't get weird about aliens too, or
I don't know that women believe in this stuff, to be honest with you. You want
ah,
to talk about this?
I don't know, dude. I met some weird chicks in my day. Married one of them, so
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've never heard girls talk like this. I feel like this is a guy's thing for sure. Like we like this.
we'll see. Because some of it goes back to like ancient religions and civilizations and spirituality. So this topic really is almost the history of humans and their understanding of creation,
It
almost.
is. It is. And I think what it is a lot of these stories and myths and legends that float around are exactly that. They're wisps of stories that existed before this story and that story and just kind of get changed over different times. So, like one of those things that we talk about was like that legend of Gilgamesh,
Hmm.
right? If we're just going to get right into it. So what have you heard? What do you know about the legend of Gilgamesh?
The Epic of Gilgamesh, I believe, is one of the oldest written stories that has to do with creation and the coming of man into what we are now, or as close as we are now. And it touches on, the Bible stories of Noah, the Adam and Eve creation. I mean, they called their creation Adamu, and then the Hebrew version of the original man was Adam.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like not really removed. It's just when you say tomato, I say
Right.
tomato, and
Oh
so
yeah.
you know,
And I think there's a lot of that because like that one of the stories in the Gilgamesh epic is of him being warned by his god that a tremendous flood was coming and that he needed to build a craft to save his family. And oddly enough, same number of people, 8 people on a boat, survived by a flood. It's the Noah account in every sense of the word.
mhm.
You know, and it's interesting because I feel like there is like an underlying narrative that does kind of span every culture and every time because there was somebody who pointed out to me one time that the Chinese symbol for water is 8 people in a boat. And I thought that's the weirdest reference ever because they do it in Sanskrit, but it actually has a visual representation too.
I just seen a thing the other day where they were like, somebody went down and I don't know what microscopes using or whatever, but they broke down that there was some atomic thing that they were looking at, and they broke it down, and it was straight the yin and the yang.
I saw that. What was
Exactly.
that? What was that? It was some kind of particle or something that they had found.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. They were like, no, this is what evenly distributes. We're like, of course it evenly distributes. The Kung Fu symbol I've always had on the back of my jacket.
hmm No, it's really weird like that. Because like I know once when I got interested, and you actually looked into it before me, and I didn't know what it was until I looked into it because you were kind enough not to pass it on to me. But so I know when I was right. So you had a cold, you didn't give me the cold in return. But when I looked into the Kabbalah,
Oh
once
yeah.
I looked into the Kabbalah, I was like, dude, that's super weird. You know what I mean? And just for a disclaimer for anybody watching this, we're not endorsing any of these things. These are just observations that we've made. These are not our
No,
practices
no,
or
no, for sure.
hey,
And all of it builds on each other. I don't think any of this, we've never gravitated towards anything that was the demonic or anything that
no,
was like of a succubus nature, nothing like that. All the stuff
right.
that we're like, it's just super interesting. Some stuff you hear and you kind of dive into. And with the Kabbalah stuff, when I was in Job Corps in Utah, a
Yes.
friend of mine through like he was into breaking and graffiti and just hip hop and stuff, and he was reading. He learned how he taught himself Hebrew, so he can read the Hebrew Bible. And then one day we were walking around Salt Lake, and there was like a bookstore that was closed, and in the window they had the mystical Kabbalah, the what, and he bought it and then I borrowed it from him, and it ended up in my possession kind of after that. And yeah, the way it broke down with the levels, and it's uh, it's almost like alchemy slash the
It
original
is.
scientific. It was their best understanding of nature, mysticism, energy, and so it just. I think all ancient civilizations have that. How else are you going to explain the way stuff happens?
So when I looked into it, the way that the Kabbalah, the way that it came to be, was explained to me, was that during the Hebrews' exile in Babylon, that it was the Hebrew priest combined basically their religion with the magic of the magic priests from Babylon, and that's how they came up with the Kabbalah. They combined the two. It's real interesting, and it made sense because they spent a long time in captivity there. They would have adopted some of them would have adopted some of those practices, but it was interesting because I felt like they were saying like the highest level of Kabbalah, when you achieve this level, you can actually manifest matter from nothing,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's interesting because when you follow the Bible narrative, that's exactly what the fallen angels had did. They manifested human bodies from absolutely nothing. So I think a lot of that stuff, when you hear and read about it, I think those are just interpretations of, kind of like you said, they're all the same narrative, but they're told through different facets.
To their understanding of
Yeah.
just the basic world around them.
And I do think that it's important, that we look into stuff and we want to have an understanding of how we got to the current state that we're in as people and our society and even technology, right? There is a narrative on how we got here. We didn't just pop up a couple of years ago with cell phones and the internet. Like, this was a thing that happened over, a long span of time.
I think we're stalled out right now, to the absolute truth. It kind of
Hmm.
seems ridiculous. We're still driving around on small explosions in my under my hood. Like, are you serious? We get your cell phone can literally tell you what you want to shop for, but
Before you want it,
you can't make my car drive on something besides small explosions.
that's a great observation. Yeah, I guess if you look at it like that, we
It
kind of.
just seems retarded. Like, really, are we still doing this?
So, what do you think about the fact, and there's obviously a million shows about this stuff, but we actually don't talk too much about this, but um, the global the fact that there's pyramids all over the globe, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think Atlantis wasn't an island. It was what they were calling the island of Earth, and that the pyramids all over the planet were kind of their cell phone towers.
Hmm.
Wherever they went, that they were tapping into the Earth's frequencies. And well, the Pyramid of Giza, the more that they break it down, the big pyramid, that they're seeing like all these tubes and all the stuff, and they break it down. And there was one lady that was like I forget her name, but she was like earlier on, like maybe in the 60s or 70s, that the first time she went into the Great Pyramid, she goes, as soon as I went in, I got the distinct feeling that this is somewhere that you wouldn't want to be when they turned it on.
Right, right.
It felt
It's
like
a
some kind of
machine.
mechanism. It didn't feel like, oh, this is like, there's not a part where you go chill in the corner on beanbags. This whole
No,
place felt like a machine.
yeah, and the size of it too, and it would explain why it needed to be so big, because that's how the machine would have worked. Something about the size and the actual girth and the weight of that,
Yeah,
right,
yeah, yeah.
thing. So it's, how when they show like a cross section of the pyramid and they show the king's chamber and the sub, the different chambers, and then there's what looks like really tiny little like tubes that come
Chefs. Yeah, the
out to
chefs.
the shafts, right? So they talk about, well, that shaft points towards this star or that star. But what I see is a place where you could pour something in. So I
Yeah.
think they must have been combining, and they couldn't even be on the same side. They had to pour them in from separate sides of the pyramid so they could combine in that king's chamber and create a reaction.
Well, I don't know if you've ever seen, I think they took, I'm pretty positive they took it off Netflix, but there was a thing, the Pyramid Code.
Uh-huh.
And if you watch the whole series, there was this one old man that like had grown up around the pyramid.
I saw that guy.
It was like I used to like these were my playgrounds, and he's like, and my
Yes.
grandfathers and the old people would tell me, and so not only can I really read ancient, the hieroglyphs, he's like, but I heard the stories, and they told me that these machines they would turn them on because the Egyptian calendars, not unlike the Mayan, where they have a golden age, a
Yeah.
silver age, a bronze to a lead, and then it goes. And when they're at the bottom, when they're towards the bronze and lead, they turn these things on, and they reverberate this frequency that if you're in a proximity, that it helps to elevate. It basically makes you undumb.
Hmm.
And they're like, when you're at the golden age, they're like, dude, the art was better, the agriculture was better. When it's towards the bronze and the lead age, everything was real like heavy hand dominant. It was all about warfare. Everything was like the ones were like the big strong dude. Like, okay, I get it. You're a big dude.
Yeah. I think too that they were a power source, because I definitely think about the Atlantic legend and the stories about Atlantis differently too. And it was funny when you were talking about that right now. I thought about the way that they talk about there were concentric rings,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think, but what they alluded to is that it was a circle. So it's interesting that you said that the whole planet was Atlantis, and I think you're right with that. I think that whole era was really identified by that, and I think there was definitely technology. Like how they talk about that the Black Knight satellite.
Mm-hmm.
You know what that is? Where it's
Mm-hmm.
in geosynchronous orbit above the Earth.
Yeah, yeah.
Supposedly, all the nations that have the ability for space travel have gone up and visited this thing. And oddly enough, nobody wants to say a word about it. You know what I mean? That's weird. Like, why
And
nothing?
what if let me pose a question to you. What if the pyramids, the Black Knight satellite, all the stuff that the structure, like how when you're looking at it from air, that like the pyramids of Giza, how it looks like the constellation Orion, or in Mexico, when you look at the pyramid of the sun and this and that, it looks like a circuit board.
I saw that one, and it
So
totally does.
what if the ancient people, and Tesla was kind of catching on to this too? He's like, it's not really a technology, it's just nature. And if
Right.
you work with it right,
Yeah.
like, yeah, you have power, you can make wormholes, you can manifest things into reality. But like, if you're being dumb and trying to walk upstream, well, you're just being dumb. That's not going to work. If you look at fish, the way they're designed, they don't really swim. They go with the water, and the water, they get swum.
Yeah.
Like it's making them go. So like, if people were just kind of less, I don't know, egocentric, or just trying to force things to happen, you're like, dude, if you we have all the power we need.
Well, I think a lot of it is that we learned how to monetize everything.
Oh
So if
yeah,
there's a power, we want to figure out how to way to charge you for it. We can't.
oh, for
That's I
sure.
feel like that's why they shut Tesla down, because he's like, I want to give the world free electricity. And
Yeah,
they're absolutely not. They need to pay for it. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. Well, and it's funny too. The thing that he built in New Jersey, that
Yeah.
tower that was going to pull in from he built it under the same premise that the Pyramid of Giza. Because what they don't show you on that cross section, where there's the King's Chamber and the Queen's Chamber,
Is
and
the aquifer underneath?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's sitting over quartz aquifers.
Yeah.
So that alone is already creating a vibration and an energy that radiates up and reverberates. And the same thing with his. He's like, no, you have to have these poles going down, and you need the certain thing, and that's where you're going to be able to pull from the ionosphere or wherever.
Yeah, because clearly, I mean, the Earth in itself, if you think about it, the way we have like the electrical field around the Earth itself is a gigantic battery, really. You know what I mean? With the saline oceans and all that, there's tons of energy here. So it's cool too. I
But
love.
people are too, really.
Yeah,
That's
true.
what your nerves, to your brain, to everything, to what you see, you hear, you taste. It's all electric pulsation. So
Yes.
the matrix wasn't that far off. I mean, we are basically batteries.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I like when you talked about the vibrations, because I feel like we talk about and we use that reference, oh, I'm sending you positive vibrations. I like to use that term, you know what I mean? But I feel like that is a genuine thing, and that's a real thing. I think we do different frequencies, do different things, and affect our body in different ways, like the way that they talk about that if you swim with dolphins, or something about the way that dolphins echolocate, that they can even tell when somebody in the water is sick or
Oh
has an
yeah,
ailment
yeah,
or something trippy.
yeah.
Like, that's all energy and vibrations. Plus, I love when they show those where they take like the top of a drum, or it's like a speaker, I guess, and they'll run different frequencies through it, and they put sand on the top of it, and
Oh
it
yeah,
different geometric shapes.
yeah.
Like, dude, that's something. That's not nothing. That's there's a technology or a forgotten, application for that for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. People that really study music and slash kind of like are into science, there's a like a G spot frequency for music to where it's pleasurable.
Yeah,
House music kind of really tapped into that. I don't know if they meant to, but that beat,
yeah,
heartbeat, and just that BPM, and like you put anything over that that's semi-rhythmic or whatever, a saxophone,
yeah.
some ladies singing something like that, and you're like you're back in the womb. And
That's what I was just gonna say.
a little disco drugs doesn't hurt either, but
Yes. Yeah, no, it's something really trippy. I think that there's a guy, I think his name is Graham Norton, and he does that Ancient Apocalypse, I think, show on
Graham
Netflix.
Hancock.
Yeah, yeah, there you
I
go.
think Graham Norton's the dude from the BBC that does. He's got like a talk show, I think.
Yeah, I think that is a different dude, but
But he's cool too. He's cool too.
I definitely believe that there was technology that existed before, right? Because you know me, I like studying the Bible. I like that. I believe in what I read. And when it talks about that God had to flood the earth, right? Because man was bad all the time. And I think about that and I'm like, man, like if man was bad all the time, like God could have sent down a plague to destroy mankind. Something, you know what I mean? Biological to kill off life on the planet. But he didn't. He chose a flood, right? And there's cool things where I've seen shows where they talk about the way that certain geological features are created, and you know, mainstream science talks about the fact that these things happened over thousands of geological years, and then other people are like, no, that's an event that happened all at once. The way that this mountain was formed, and I even look at the way um, in like the strata on mountains, like if that happened over thousands of years, I don't feel like there would be like these defined edges like that's like when a flood comes through and lays down dirt, right? So I think that the world, the pre-diluvian, the pre-flood world had technology, and I think it was because of the fallen angels. I think that the world had things it shouldn't have had, and I think that God had to bury them. You know what I mean? And I
Well, let me do a small disclaimer though. All of this, you can dive as deep as you want into all of this. There was a time back when you lived down the street from Aunt Debbie on Fair Valley when we were all still dabbling in the mystical arts, and you were like, I don't know, one day just like all matter of fact, I don't know what we were doing, but like, yeah, like what if we're all just like monkeys that were like we, you know, the aliens just like modified us, and this was like way before ancient aliens were into this, and I was like, huh? But but you can still keep your belief in God and still keep your mind open. And I think a lot of these people, like especially there's like a guy in Egypt who's like the head dude, and he won't let people believe anything besides what he's saying. And
Dahi
like,
Huas.
and the rest of these people, the mainstream, scientists that won't take on any new, and it's like you have to every once in a while scrap because society's knowledge level has evolved.
Right.
Like society has evolved. There's been an awakening. You know what? We are up for that. It doesn't mean man may have been around for a lot longer than they say. At the oldest, they're like, yeah, I don't know, maybe 40,000 years or something. You're like, dude, the the procession in order to clock procession, you have to see it at least once, probably twice.
I
To
know,
be
and the
like, yeah,
Mayans
that's
had
going to
it
happen
down.
again.
And the
So
Mayans could do it.
so that's 27,000.
Yeah.
So okay, so let's say roughly 70 some odd thousand years. So you had to have been around long enough, have
Yes.
food, have somewhere to chill. You obviously got time to chill and look at stars at night. So we've been around for a while. So if the pre-diluvian civilizations,
yes.
if that's what was the last starting point, there's got to be a couple, two, three before that. That's
Well,
just,
there's that that cave system. I think it's in Turkey, that Darren Kuyu.
yeah, yeah,
They
yeah,
go
yeah,
down something like 30 layers until they finally hit the water table. And
yeah.
they have ventilation systems, and they talk about that they think that it's possible that that was created during the last ice age, so that they could survive the ice age and have warmth and consistent temperatures. And that makes a ton of sense to me. I do.
They actually have records to where they say that they were helped by ant people.
I know.
That's who helped, and it was like, and it wasn't. They didn't. Who knows? But they didn't say that it was because of the cold. They were hiding out from something,
Right.
and they got help from these ant people, and they were under there chilling for a while. Like until until we don't see no more, whatever, we ain't coming back
Yeah.
out.
But I had somebody the other day that we have conversations pretty regularly, kind of about the Bible and different things, and he was kind of basically telling me, do I believe, how do I basically marry my idea that I believe all of these older situations and civilizations existed, and technology and these different things. Like, how do I marry those with my belief in the Bible, right? Because he's like, according to the Bible narrative, it's like 6,000 years back to Adam.
Hmm.
What I mean? And I go, the Bible talks about, um, a lot of different time periods, and it talks about a day being 1,000 years to God and different things like that. And I say, there's a lot of things in the Bible that I don't think that if you found out that it actually was, instead of 6,000 years, it was 60,000 years ago. Like the math was just slightly off. You know what I mean?
It's
That
way off. If
in
you follow
regards
the
to in
lineage,
regards to our perception of it, I said,
yeah.
would that change your faith in any way? Would that change your no, right? So I feel like it's kind of like one of those, like, why argue a point that doesn't actually have relevance? It doesn't change the way I feel or my belief system. And you made a really fantastic comment when we talked about doing this. And I thought it was really great that you said that, because you said, and you mentioned it, that, it's easy to look into these things and lose your religion. And I thought that's a spectacular comment. I feel just the opposite of that. I mean, we talked about it. I feel like when I look into these old accounts and these old stories, what I see is evidence that the Bible's narrative is real, because I see echoes of it. It's interesting. I was on a plane one time and decided to go old school, and I bought a Time magazine, like an actual magazine. I was feeling
Wow.
nostalgic, like, right, like I was in the 1920s
You
again.
were trying to do a look or something,
No, I
dude.
was, I was. So I'm on the plane and I've got my magazine and I'm just, doing my thing on the plane. And it had this whole article about Zoroastrianism.
Mm,
And it was interesting because they were really getting into the fact that it was like the oldest recorded monotheistic religion ever. And they talked about what their belief system was and the fact that they believed in this eternal flame, which represented knowledge. And I was like, that it predated even the Hebrew religion by thousands of years. And I think that there is, again, it feels like the same narrative and the same story being told with slightly different faces and slightly different names. So what I see is that there is a reliable narrative out there, but everybody's kind of got their own little version of what it really means,
hmm.
or who actually did it. But it's the same story over and over.
Which kind of sounds corny. Like in the end, like this guy saw, so he's the one, or that guy saw, so he's the one. Like you can find God and the divine in anything if you have the right eyes. You
Yeah.
know, the discussion we had last week that was horrible, and it was like, yeah, I still think that there's more good than bad in the world,
Yeah.
and you can believe in UFOs and ancient civilizations and things, and it doesn't make you a demon, it's
Right.
just there's things that could be possible, that why shut them out? Because the Bible was written by men,
Mm.
and maybe I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but humans aren't perfect.
No,
the,
no.
the, the man that was here for a minute that was perfect, they nailed him to a cross.
Yeah.
So everybody else is, like, dude, you do the best you can, be the best person you can, and if you happen to see something flying in the air and you point, like, dude, that doesn't mean, I don't know what it is, but that doesn't make you an idiot for, like, people can't categorize it right.
Yeah, no, 100%. I liked when I study the Bible and I really look at it. I feel like this is becoming a Bible discussion, but it wasn't my intention. When I look at the story in the Bible, what I see is as a historical record, not of perfect people, not, you know what I mean, but of the very first couple blowing it and falling short, and their offspring, the very second generation, committed murder. And it really is an honest record of mankind's failings and shortcomings, the fact that we are horribly imperfect, right? So I feel like that, to me, was one of the things that I feel like we shouldn't overlook in regards to that written record, that it really is helping us to understand that we were so far off, right? Because that's actually what the word sin means, is missing the mark, right? We were so far off the mark that God had goes, okay, 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 we got to reset him, right? And he's like, Jesus, like, would you mind going down and yeah, I'll go straighten him out. You know what I mean? So I feel like that's kind of like that same narrative. So I think that, yes, we have to remember that we're all terribly imperfect, but that, yeah, that there is a divine out there. There is a guidance.
And maybe be a little more tolerable towards everybody and everything. If you
Yeah.
believe in if your religion is a head of lettuce, man, dude, I hope your lettuce is delicious and it stays green forever. If you're a good person and you ain't screwing nobody over, whatever, you ain't
Yeah.
got to do my thing.
Yeah.
So
I've talked to a lot of people about it, and I always feel like I've come across a lot of people and they're like, you know, they're not interested or they don't believe in a God. You know what I mean? They're like, I don't believe in that at all. And I always feel like that's got to be tough. You know what I mean? There's this one comedian that did this skit, and I'm gonna mess it up. But he said that he feels like people that believe that we came from nothing. He says that like he thought it was kind of funny. He says, you know, he says, I believe in a God, and I believe that God created all things, moon, heaven, stars, all these different things, right, that exist in the world today, people, everything, animals. And he says, but I think it's interesting that if you think that all these things came from nothing, right? He says, because if you really follow it, he says, you believe that you were created from nothing, right? That nothing created all of the universe, stars, quasars, people, dogs, birds, everything, technology, nothing created these things, right? And that you believe when you die, you return to nothing. And he goes, doesn't that sound an awful lot like believing in God? Like you still are believing in something. You can't believe in nothing. You know what I mean? Because nothing is still something. And I thought, wow, that was an interesting perception of it.
That's not unlike trying to get us back on track. That's not unlike the people that are like, oh no, there's UFOs or there's no way. And you're like, I don't think we were put here in the middle of the ocean all by ourselves. It just looks like an awful waste of space. And I don't think God makes mistakes like that. It's just in
Agreed.
nature doesn't make mistakes like that.
And I think there's a lot of things we don't understand. I think a lot of what we perceive as UFOs, I mean, really the nuts and bolts of it to me, and my honest opinion on record, right, is I think a lot of what we perceive as extraterrestrial crafts are actually our technology, right? That we're not privy to yet. I think a lot of what we see is natural. So I'm going to tell you what I mean by this. So you know, like how the Aztecs believed in the phoenix, right? The fiery bird that would be resurrected from its own ashes again, right? And I think to myself, what would possess a people to have a myth like this? And I think, you know, that obviously a lot of the myths and stories that we have about things are because they were trying to describe something they saw. And I believe I've seen this bird. Okay. So when I lived in Covina, it was probably like 8 o'clock at night one day, and our cousin Chucky came banging on my door. Boom, 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 boom. And I came to the door, and him and a couple of guys that he was with all like fell in the door and almost fell on top of me when I opened the door. And I was like all nervous, like, what happened? And they go, it's right there. And I was like, oh, these guys must be high as a kite. And so I went outside and I looked, and sure enough, there was a telephone pole right outside of my house. And right just above the height of the telephone pole was a fiery orb. And it flickered and it dripped like molten metal. It never actually touched the ground. The weird part is that when I went up and I looked at it, it felt like it recognized that I looked at it, and like it immediately kind of like moved kind of behind another object. And I was like, what is going on? Because I felt like I genuinely was kind of like it was seeing me see it.
Yeah.
And they said that they had followed it for blocks until it got to my neighborhood, right? So, you know, it was crazy. I remember, I'll never forget seeing that. But there was something about it that felt natural. That's the only way I can explain it. Just the same way that when you walk up to a flock of birds, they scatter. You know what I mean? It had a weird kind of like I was interacting with something biological. And then I had talked to other people, you know, obviously I told this story a lot in the coming months. And I bumped into other neighbors in the neighborhood that would be like, oh my God, we saw it. And so I was like, oh, I wasn't tripping. Like it was a thing. And they said, we saw it down by the power lines over here and over there. And it could have been ball lightning for all I know or whatever.
Plasma.
Huh?
Maybe it was a plasma displacement.
Yeah. But it dripped like the way like acetylene will drip, or like when they weld metal, but it never hit the ground. It was super weird. Didn't make any sounds. There was no crackling or anything like the way a fire would be. But I thought there was something, what I saw, in my opinion, was something natural, right? So I think that we see things at times and we don't know what they are, you know, and I know our brains have a necessity to assign something to it. Mine said that's something biological, you know what I mean? And
well, here's let me give you another question.
And I think that's where like the Phoenix bird myth comes from.
Oh, absolutely. And it was their whatever they saw blew their mind enough to where they're like, we have to make this digestible for people that,
yes,
you know, and obviously when you walk around the streets, you're not bumping into Edison, Tesla, and Einstein. You know, most you're like, I have to kind of keep it real simple for people. So they were like, yeah, it was a fiery bird. They couldn't tell people that it was an energy from the, even if they understood it, they're like, yeah, everybody's not going to get that.
No,
So, um,
or believe it.
but so going back to the when you blew my mind with the whole thing. So if we were, if we are the offspring of some kind of genetic seeding, which the whole Epic of Gilgamesh and the Anunnaki stories and all of that, they have no qualms about it. If you go through and they were like, we were legit made because these dudes didn't want to work too hard. They had a system going, and this turned into hard work, mining gold and doing whatever they were doing, and they built us, and we're just smart enough to follow orders, you know, and we have that strand of DNA to where they call it junk DNA, and it was like, I don't think it's junk. It's turned off because maybe we were kind of getting smart or whatever. But the whole point being is that we're not like any other animals on Earth.
No,
If we're a primate, how come the orangutan's still chilling over there like that?
dude, I say that all the time, right? Like, because when it comes to evolution, and there's people that are like just staunch evolutionists, I guarantee you, we developed from apes in the forest, and because the forest changed and there were big open plains that we needed to see better, so we learned how to walk upright and carry things. And it's exactly like you said. Then where's the lizard people? Well, lizards never did that. Where's the bird people? And why is there not some weird version of a half man, half ape walking around somewhere? It would still be happening, is what I'm saying. Why was it just one species with us?
No, and I saw this one dude that was like a geneticist, and he was like, dude, in order for evolution to throw our DNA together to make us the way they are, it's like if the equivalent of saying that a tornado went through an old junkyard where there was airplanes from like World War II, and it put together a stealth fighter now. I was like,
I know.
Yeah, that doesn't happen.
No, and I love that idea that creation itself alludes to a creator. You know what I mean? And I think that that's where all of these stories and myths, like I said, nobody ever was walking along a beach and found a Rolex in the sand, exactly like you were saying. It was like, wow, this used to be a seashell. Like, nobody ever says that. You know what I mean? Clearly somebody manufactured this thing. That's like that Antikythera mechanism they found in the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
Like, wow, it's some kind of heavy duty, like ancient computer.
It's a freaking Timex, bro. That thing's bitching.
It is. It is a complex. It is a Rolex, mechanism that I think they said it kept track of, again, the celestial movements and different things.
Yeah. As a standard, you twist it the right way, and you're like, oh, okay, follow that one.
Yeah.
So that's pretty bad. I would like one of those now.
I know. That seems like that would look cool sitting on a shelf, watching it move. So, what about dragons? What do you think about dragons?
I think there was a time when like dinosaurs and men were probably wandering around the same time, and there was something that I don't know if it breathed fire, but there was something that through Mesoamerica, the Chinese have their thing, the Europeans have
all the civilizations, the Mayans, the Toltecs, the Aztecs, right?
The Mayans transformed and it turned into a dude. I like that where the dude came out of the mouth.
I know, I love that.
Badass.
Yeah, that is cool. But so it's interesting that the Aztecs considered him a feathered serpent, right? Mm-hmm. Because we always thought that dinosaurs and reptiles looked like the ones we see today. But the more that they study them, they're like, oh no, birds are actually part of that same dinosaur lineage. And it makes sense. It seems so funny to me that it took us so long to come around to that. Dude, look at an emu. Look at an ostrich. Like, dude, those are totally dinosaurs.
There was a handful of dudes like in the beginning of the 1900s, the turn of the century, that legit were like, this is what it is. And everybody else just obeyed and just went with it and never really questioned it, and was like, no, we're going to put it together. And yeah, it obviously had scales of this color. What skin did you find, fool?
Yeah.
So it was just really weird. Just like, it seems like the past maybe 40 years that it started to like, oh, there's a possibility that Turkey is a direct descendant of a raptor. Like they're built the same.
But that just alludes to that there is, a need to keep to the story. I think whenever we feel like the story changes on us, like we get insecure because, oh my God, then what does it really mean? And is there any real truth in the world? So I think, a lot of people get really nervous about that, and it gives them anxiety, and they're like, no, I don't want to break from this narrative.
Yeah, for sure. People want to be comfortable. Yeah, they want to be comfortable. it seems to me throughout history that there's a handful of people that for sure want to dummy everybody up. You know, whether it's UFOs, don't get too deep into that, or make you look like a fool for questioning stuff like that, or back in the day, the dinosaurs, or anything. That there's a select few that's like they're like shut up and go back to work, basically.
Right.
You know, and if you get the whole picture, you're like, oh, this isn't a bunch of different stories. This is actually all the same story, and it all goes together. You know, the power source and the alien, they came and they're checking us, and like all of it, I'm sure goes together. There's no way it all doesn't go together in some kind of poo-poo platter, some galactic poo-poo platter.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that definitely, like who you talked about, the Anunnakis, right? Like, the way obviously they came to Earth and they brought technology to man and they taught them, how to write.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What is it? The cuneiform? I can't say the name right now, but
Uniform.
yeah, they gave them writing and they gave them an understanding of times and seasons and really helped progress them as people.
Everything, writing, arithmetic, science, everything.
So I think all of those narratives are all different versions of the same stories. So I just recently read the Book of Enoch.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's not a recommended reading, and I don't recommend it to anybody as a disclaimer.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that the Bible, the Council of the Nicaea, they didn't consider that as a canonized book, so they didn't include it in the actual final version of the Bible. And I understood why when I read it. I feel like there was a lot of information in there that people shouldn't have. That's why I don't recommend it for a lot of people. If you're sensitive about those things, like don't read into that. But it was interesting because it talked about basically that different fallen angels had come to Earth, and they even named them by name, which to me was a bit, I don't want to know that. But it talked about how each one of these entities brought down a different discipline with them. Mm-hmm. One of them taught man war. The other one taught man science and different things. So when I hear that, again, that's like a biblical writing, right? Coming from that same era and that same time. And I think that definitely, again, that's the common story, is that some sort of being, right, came down to the earth. And isn't it the same whether they're fallen angels, whether they're UFOs, whether they're Anunnakis, time travelers, portals, whatever it is?
That's every civilization on the planet, every religion. Yes. It's the something from the sky came down, yes, taught us, said that this is how to do whatever, took off and was like, someday I'll come back. Every religion, the Native Americans, the Mesoamericans, yes, the Asia, Middle East, everywhere. So it's like, come on, bro. If you're not from here, you're an extraterrestrial. If you're not from here, you have to go back up, or whatever. So
have you ever looked into Scientology?
Yeah.
I think that their story, when I first heard it, sounded super ridiculous on their explanation of what they believe. But when I really started thinking about it, so my understanding of what that belief system is that they believe that there was some sort of a galactic war that happened like in space above the Earth, like around the Earth somehow, right? And that obviously there was a winner and there was a loser in this galactic battle, and that the losers somehow lost their technology and got stranded here on the Earth, right? And that Scientology explains that those aliens that got trapped here on the Earth actually exist as like spirit creatures, and they can't die, they live forever. And that it's because of the influence of these spirit creatures that mankind has the problems they have. I was like, dude, that's the Bible.
I'm so glad you're on the computer and somewhere not in front of me. I want to hit you with a cream custard pie in the face. This is the same dude that used to write fiction, and it was just like, I don't know, me, anytime I hear anything, I'm like, or if I see something, I flip to the back and I'm like, check the author.
Oh, I know.
Check the author for sure. So if you're in touch with the divine, you don't have to go through people. Yeah. And it's the energy and it's all of that, so if you're in touch with that, you don't need a cosigner for that.
It's interesting because when I was having this discussion with this individual, and we really got into this part of the discussion, we were like really splitting hairs, right, over the details of the story, the actual timelines, length of time, this type of thing. And I think whatever your relationship is with whatever your higher power is, if you are on a mission or on the path of self-enlightenment or self-improvement, period. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I had told him something, and it was funny because I'd never really thought of this term in this way. Because again, we were arguing over the details right? Not the general narrative we agreed on, but it was the details. And I said, do you think it's possible that that's why the saying is what it is that the devil is in the details? Because the details are where we find that our differences, and we draw our lines, and oh no, it can't be that amount of time. It's got to be this amount of time, or and we dig in these things. But as a
That's
general narrative,
that's been the war in the Middle East since forever. You know, uh between these are all sons of Abraham.
I know.
And who's to say? Because if you want to go that way, in the old the story of Enoch and Abraham and all those people, it says that this dude lived for 300 years. This dude
Yeah,
lived for whatever 1,000 years. This and that. I was like, no, it must have been off or something like that. Really? I don't think they were dumb. I mean, just like I said, with the junk DNA, and we don't know.
right.
But the whole point is, all these people, it's just you were in the same place. You're literally of the same blood,
Trip
but
out.
we're tripping on the details so much that it was like, dude, you pray to the east if you want to. I'm not going to make a big deal about it. I'm
Exactly.
a dude. You know what I'm saying? Like,
And it's interesting because I remember reading in the Bible the one time when it talked about Abraham and Sarah, and that he had his handmaiden, and he had a child with her, Ishmael, right? And then he bore one with his wife, right?
Isaac.
Isaac, and that the two women were bickering at each other, and it was creating problems, and that basically he was asked to have her and her child go away, right? Sarah asked. So it was interesting because when Abraham was praying to God about that, that he had stress about it. This is my son. I mean, literally, Ishmael would have been his firstborn. So
Mhm.
it's like the anxiety, like, dude, how do I do
He
this?
was the natural heir.
And I thought it was interesting because God's reply, according to the Bible, was, that he would take care of Ishmael as well. And as a matter of fact, I will also make him a mighty nation. And when I read that, I was all like, is that where Islam came from? Like, it's an interesting phrase to read.
Yeah.
I mean, so and I agree with you 1,000%. How can people that share bloodlines in history and really their religions all coincide within one man and that type of thing? I think that the reason the Middle East is the way it is I believe that the powers to be, whether it's BlackRock or whether it's, you know what I mean, the United Nations or whatever you believe is this controlling group or individual over the earth, right? That we gave Israel back a natural land in that area, right? So they could have Jerusalem back as a natural dwelling place, right? It's weird that we did that. Why would we do that? I mean, I get it. Like, somebody described the United States as a Judeo-Christian country. And when I heard that term, I was all like, oh, that's interesting because we are predominantly a Christian country, but you can't have Christianity without Judaism. That
Mhm.
was just Judaism 2.0. So, I mean, I get the connection in a way, but why would we do that? I think that it happened because the powers to be knew that if they did that, they would intentionally destabilize that area and they could control the resources there.
Where's another thing too that may be highly controversial, and this is just my opinion, but I study history and I kind of thought about it too, and I kind of see the way that the way that they treat their neighbors, and Palestinians really are Jews, and I think until like the 60s,
Oh, you're going to get your house burned down for that one.
if you were like if you were a Jewish native, your passport actually said Palestinian. It was you're a that was where you would come from, and you'd go to other countries or whatever. So I don't know. It just kind of seems like a weird, redundant kind of thing to. I don't know. You spend so much time fighting that in the end, that what you wanted to get, that it didn't matter because you're never going to freaking enjoy it. Like the people that they're really trying to make a good life for themselves, and they're hustling and whatever. And then the kids are always do stuff. And it was like, dude, you got everything you ever wanted. And it was a horrible freaking ride.
Yeah.
I would have it would have been better to have way less and you
Yeah.
just chill out a little bit more,
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think a simpler life is an easier life. You know, there's a comedian who talked about that. He was looking around at his house and his kids and his daughters were growing up, and that they were telling him they're going to leave and they're going off to college, and he was going to be, they were leaving. And he said he was like basically looking around and he goes, I didn't want any of this. He's all, I didn't want this house. I didn't want to live in this neighborhood. I didn't want this car that I drive. He's all, I did all this for you. He goes, and now you're leaving me here? And he said, the more that he thought about it, he goes, man, he's all, there was really a time. He's all, if you're living a simple life and you're poor right now, he says, you really got the best life ever. He says, you don't have anything to lose. You're driving around in this crappy 1983 Toyota Corolla. He says, you own it outright. He's all, you can do whatever you want. Glue Darth Vader's head on the hood. It doesn't matter. He says, people move out of your way on the street because they know you got nothing to lose. So he goes, as soon as these girls go off to college, he says, I'm going to Bruce Willis this house. He says, I'm going to put all of my favorite things in a backpack, Van Halen CDs, you know what I mean? These different things. And he's all, and I'm going to blow this house up. And he's all, how much can an 83 Corolla cost on eBay? But it was a real observation that a simple life is a good life. You know what I mean? And it really is. I know that I dream about, like homesteading. Like I would love to have a piece of land somewhere with a river that ran through it, and then I could build a place and read a book, write a book, build furniture. Like, oh my God, can you imagine? I'd probably live 300 years. You'd be so relaxed.
Maybe have a cool beaver pelt coat, pimping out.
At least lapels, beaver felt
minimum.
Yeah, at the very minimum. Yeah. So I got one more for you. So I kind of trip on the whole space race, right? The United States and Soviet Union, this race to get to the moon.
Oh, I'm already going to chime in. I think it was bullshit.
Okay, watch your language, son.
Yeah, I don't think we went.
I don't think it happened either, and I'm going to tell you why. I think that it was all a ruse, right? And I definitely
it was propaganda,
and it was a very successful form of propaganda. So what happened to the Soviet Union after the space race? Are they still around?
No, they didn't make any of that. Well, so
that country technically doesn't even exist anymore. The Union of Soviet Socialist Republic crumbled and broke up and is now the current government and they blame a lot of that on the fact
they were trying to chase us the whole time.
And we weren't even really doing it. Nah. They tried and they dumped every bit of their resources into going to the moon. And I feel like we secretly were like, we didn't even go.
Oh, no, for sure. Yeah, we were like, bro, nobody can do it, dog. Like, what are you trying so hard for? And they were killing us. The first satellite, they put the dog.
I know.
And then the dude got out for, I think he wrote Sputnik for a minute. They're like, dude, we're
on the outside.
Oh, they were killing us. They were killing us. They're like, dude, even with our Nazi scientists, we're still not able to do it right. If the Nazis can't do it, nobody can.
Werner von Braun, if he can't do it, just let it go.
Hey, yeah. No, and there's stuff too. There was another dude that worked with him. He was an old. He always had black rings around his eyes, and he was like, "We didn't really come up with any of this. That a lot of this too, we inherited. That supposedly they got a downed UFO that landed in the Black Forest, and that he's like, a lot of this was handed to us. We didn't invent this stuff."
It was interesting too, the way that the Nazis did have technology that seemed like it was 100 years more advanced.
Oh, it was. They were way past everybody.
What is the one that the Nazi bell thing that they said they had?
Yeah, the Glocke.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dude, that's
cool light bulb. The cool light bulb.
What is that?
Like, it was the motor. They figured out how to make the motor. There was another dude too. I forget his name too. And he was like, yeah, you put mercury in this thing, you spin it a certain way, and it creates a gravity field. So they put that and then somehow motorized it or something. And the thing, so I don't think a lot of the extraterrestrials that are for reals, the latest theory that I'm kind of gravitating to is they're not interplanetary extraterrestrials. They're interdimensional traveling extraterrestrials.
Yes. Absolutely,
and it's easier to create a wormhole to a dimension, and
it makes more sense. The time and the energy required to make that trip, you would have to be able to travel at speeds that were you couldn't do it. They're almost impossible. Like I feel like the natural laws of the universe would prevent you from moving that fast. So it would need to be interdimensional. And it's interesting that when people talk about that they have had alleged encounters with UFOs. Mm-hmm. They always say that it felt somehow like they were dealing with something that was, like you said, like kind of a spirit creature. Like there's something different to it. That it is. Oh God, what was the term for it? But yeah, that they felt like that it was something else. It wasn't just technological. It wasn't just biological. That it was supernatural. You know. So I think there is something to that. You know, I trip out when I see pictures of the moon though. When they show like that there's supposedly structures on the moon and different things like that.
Why not?
I think that when we had technology on the earth that we shouldn't have had, I think that there was this ability to leave the vicinity of the earth. And I think they started colonizing the moon. And I also think that's why there had to be this big reset.
Well, going back to what I was trying to say before, there's certain people that were put into like, oh no, you can't believe in that. The pyramids were just for the pharaohs and this and that, and no, there's no way that in Peru, in Machu Picchu, that those things. No, man built it. Dude, man can't melt rock to make it fit together perfectly like Legos. Like all of that, you need to have some other kind of design stuff. So what if it wasn't that we weren't supposed to have this stuff, but it was ours, and somebody else came and they were like, you're getting a little too cool. You know what I'm saying? Like what if we got punked and bullied a little bit? You know what I mean?
But that kind of still falls in line with that same narrative. Somebody bigger and more powerful than us came back and reset us back.
Because Mars was very Earth-like, and the stuff that they're having, the rovers or whatever, that they're finding that there's a lot of radioactivity, just like in that one, the place in the desert in India where it's like, oh no, this is like there's tons of radioactivity, and there's shadows of people on the wall, and they're like, this was a nuclear thing, and that was in like one of the Indian stories.
Yeah, the Mahabharata, I think it's called.
And it's the one that Oppenheimer was talking about in his speech after they dropped the atom, where he gets all melancholy, and it was that story. They're like, oh, like now we have the power of God, the power of the sun.
Yeah, and they talk about in that story too the Vermanas, which were basically flying crafts, and that, you know what I mean, that they had nuclear capabilities in those days.
Yeah, their books are like unreal.
I know, it's
a
great.
Monkey shooting a flaming arrow towards the house in the sky. And you're like, dude, I have never felt more like I've been on acid until you open one of those. And you're like, dude, you guys were on some stuff. And I think that's the oldest, like still in place civilization and religion that's still going.
Yeah, possibly. Who are they saying? There's another one. It's the they weren't Sikhs. There's another religion they talked about that was that old too. That's where they get the whirling dervishers.
Oh yeah. That's in Turkey.
Yes. Yeah. That's another one that's like one of the oldest continued practice religions in the world. But yeah, I think there's definitely a narrative at play, and there's a wisp of the truth in all these things. You know what I mean? And I think eventually we're going to get to it. I think for right now, it doesn't benefit us. I mean, imagine how much damage we do to ourselves now with technology that we have. Imagine if we could spread this kind of like virus that we have now of self-destruction,
our lameness all over the galaxy.
Yeah. So I think
a big old interplanetary pervert.
Yeah, that's us. Yeah,
dude, there's got to be that though. I mean, really, we're the only ones ever. There's not like some big old squid out there that's like a giant perv.
So I work. That's disgusting.
I'm just saying, you know what I mean? Like, what, we're exclusive to like this stuff?
So I worked with this guy. I can't remember his name right now. And I was in commerce. I worked in commerce, and I was doing graphics at the time, Daniel. And we were the only two guys in this graphics department. And I was brand new there, and they introduced me to him. And we were working on packaging. They did extension cords, this company, and all kinds of stuff from Sub-Zero.
Daniel? Are we talking about Hex?
No.
Oh, okay,
funny.
Okay.
I was just talking about him the other day. No, this guy was just somebody I worked with, and it was the weirdest job I ever had. So our computers basically faced each other, so we couldn't see each other. Like, he would be on the other side of my computer, so I couldn't see him. And it was weird. He loved Rush. He listened to Rush every day. So like that. And he just talked about how they're the greatest band of all times. But every once in a while, Daniel would break out into tears. I would hear him on the other side of the computer, and he would just start crying. Horrible tears.
Really sad.
Dude, a broken dude. And I was like, dude, what happened? He's like, oh my, I loved my girlfriend, and she broke up with me, and he was devastated by this thing that had happened to him. My heart went out to him, right? It was no excuse for listening to so much Rush, but anyways. So he started to tell me one day that his dad had some knowledge that once upon a time that the Earth was part of this galactic alliance or galactic brotherhood of different planets that are inhabited by intelligent beings, and that we were all in contact with each other at one point. But for some reason, the Earth put itself in a place where we got put on timeout. We got shut off from any kind of advanced civilizations, and it didn't matter how much we tried to reach out and send signals out there that we wouldn't get an answer. And I thought, well, that made a lot of sense to me, because for all the stuff that we're trying to do and send messages out in the Voyager spacecraft and all these different things, and we have these huge, radio telescopes, we can't pick up a click, you know what I mean? Nothing from outer space. It's so quiet and dead that, to me, that definitely feels like that's intentional.
It feels like you're being intentionally ignored.
Our channel is turned off. Like, we cannot send or receive. We have no cell service at all on this planet. And it's interesting because the Bible account talks about that basically the earth is in a situation of quarantine right now because the fallen angels and mankind's imperfect state, that not until basically we get it together will our living situation change, which I believe that those stories, like the Galactic Alliance and all those, it's all part of that same story where, yeah, we are on timeout because we're not in a good place right now. But it's also cool because the Bible talked about other planets, right? Mm-hmm. And it talked about that for the earth, he says that God didn't create the earth simply for nothing, but he created it to be inhabited. And immediately I read that and I go, like all of the stars we see in the heavens, they must have all been created to be inhabited, right? But for some reason right now, they could be. Maybe they've already fixed their problems and they're in a better state than we are, and they're able to kind of intermingle. We right now are still in an infant stage.
If you're cruising through neighborhoods,
yes,
you go by and you're like, wow, this is a cool neighborhood, you'll want to stop there. If you're cruising through the hood and there's liquor stores and people out the front, you're like, I can see that guy smoking crack. Yeah, you're not going to want to stop. Well, if we can't get along with each other and we're fighting over or resources, and they're seeing like, dude, these the masses are being controlled by very few with things that aren't even really worth bickering over, then yeah, they're going to pass us by. You know.
Well, all they got to do is tune into our TV stations. Just watch the news one time. You got to just keep riding past this rock.
Well, the first thing that was ever put on TV was the Olympics, and it was Hitler. Welcome to the opening of the Olympics. So that's the first broadcast. So since then, they were like, dude, these guys are on a good one.
Your first introduction to mankind is Adolf Hitler.
Like, what's, this nice mustache. What's with these people? But that guy, Bob Lazar, the one that did the whole, like, hey, I was over
at 51. I was an engineer. Yeah.
So when his introduction, they sat him in a room and gave him a bunch of books on all this stuff. And he thinks he's being messed with. He's like, oh, yeah, well, we have this technology. Okay, well, whatever. And then he saw one and it was like pictures of it. He goes, well, that makes sense. Everybody's seen this stuff. It was our stuff. We're trying to keep it on a hush, just like the stealth bomber and back in the day, the B-2 and the one that got shot down over Russia and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So and then he goes that there was one that was like about the aliens, and that there was like, I don't know, they already cataloged like maybe 8 different species, and that the way they considered us wasn't really like we were like anything besides a container. That's what they called us, a container. And the guy that was interviewing was like, okay, that was a weird. He goes, yeah, I thought it was too. And he goes, but a container for what? He goes, I don't know, but they just called us a container. That's all we are, is our containers. That's how they discussed us.
Yeah, that's
a soul container, an energy container, until you can evolve enough, to where like, dude, I don't even speak your language, dog. For right now, all you are is just a meat bag walking around with the soul. You have power that you don't even know how to turn on.
So that, really, again, might be the truth in a way, and that might be a language barrier if you really think about it, because again, it talks about the way man was created and that God breathed life into man, right? So like he put life into man. And it's interesting because like when we die, it feels like what's left behind is a container. I mean, I don't believe that we move on to another consciousness, so to speak. That's my personal beliefs. But I definitely know that when we pass, the body remains and there's nothing there. And I've seen people pass away, and when you see there's nothing there, you know what I mean? That too. You talked about that in our last podcast. Like there was no doubt in your mind. There was no reason to do. We do. So in a way, we are a container.
Don't, just between me and you, don't bury me. It's ugly. Don't put a weird suit on me and put makeup on me.
Yeah. No, I got you.
It's a waste. I'm gone.
I'm with you too. Like, yeah, cremate me. Don't do that, and don't come to see it. You know, I'm gone. I'm not there. I'm not in the box. Yeah, there are some weird, you know, rituals or traditions that go around the burial of the dead. But yeah, I mean, you know, in a way, we are kind of a container, you know. But
Got a long way to go to evolve to talk
yeah,
any. If you go into the folklore with from like maybe World War II through Roswell and supposedly a lot of the activity spiked heavily, and there's always been activity from Enoch in the Bible with his stories of wheels within wheels, and he saw stuff, and he went up to see the roundness of the earth, and it's like, okay, 4,000 years ago, you've seen something, and then to the Renaissance paintings where there's the Madonna, whatever, and then in the corner there's a UFO, and there's like a shepherd or something pointing at it, and or their weird little stuff. So there's been that
yes,
forever, but the big spike supposedly, according to the UFO community, was World War II when we started testing atomics.
yeah.
As soon as we tested in White Sands, and then after that they were like, oh, theoretically, when you detonate an atomic bomb, it reverberates.
I'm
Like
sure
it reverberates.
it sends a
Like
vibration into the universe.
the whole string theory thing is that energy is kind of connected, and that's how you would connect into wormholes and travel through different dimensions. And so, as we ignited that, it shook all the spider webs everywhere that we're connected to, and
Yeah,
that's when they all started coming like, dude, what's with these fools?
yeah,
Like, it seems to, and you're gonna blow it up on your own planet?
yeah. I
Dude, these
know.
are dumb, bro.
So just recently, within the past few months, the last time that they fired up the CERN collider,
Yeah, I saw that. It
and they said that they believe that they created, you know, a wormhole when they activated it, and there was a lot of chatter about that. And I saw some really interesting posts
or
where there
black
was,
hole. No, they created a black hole for like a couple of milliseconds.
yeah, and they said that they believe what happened was is when they did this experiment the last go round, that they actually created a like a fracture, like in the fabric of space, and that we experienced some kind of a split in timelines, and that we're in a different reality now. And they go, and it was a very compelling, um, you know, way to look at it. They go, look at some of the stuff around you. Like if you're from the old timeline, certain things that you knew and remembered are different now in this timeline. And they're all like, if you pay attention and you really look around, and it was kind of cool because they gave an explanation to some of the stuff, and I came away from that like,
You're talking about like the Mandela effect and weird stuff like that.
yes. And they said we're actually existing now in a different timeline. And that our past now, because we're in a different reality, is slightly different. And there's little hints of it if you pay attention. You're like, that's weird. I don't remember that thing being like that. You know what I mean? And your memories of the original timeline still exist with you, but we're in a different reality. So some of that stuff, I can't help but to have moments where I think about stuff like this, and I think it's either all crap or it's all real. You know what I mean? And I definitely vacillate
What's
between
your
both.
gut reaction? Like when you and first of all, what's your gut reaction on them being able to turn that thing on and do whatever they want without some kind of vote or anything?
Yeah, no, yeah, if you're going to create a black hole on this planet,
Can,
you should have a vote by the population.
I gotta have a license to catch fish in Newport, but you're gonna turn on the thing that makes black holes just like whatever.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm just saying it's kind of
No,
so
that's very practical.
so in your gut reaction on that in this whole there's a shift in the timeline. I mean, you're an intelligent human. You have gut reaction, you know what I mean? And you're like
Mhm.
you get an initial knee jerk like or whatever. Like what
Yeah.
was your take on that? Yes.
I felt like honestly, like there was a good possibility that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, the explanation was very compelling, and some of the examples they gave, I was all like, oh, like I hadn't thought about that. And I think it's easy for us to kind of like overlook stuff because our brain is designed to fill gaps in.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have like that thing, you're like, oh, yeah, that is weird. Like I feel like we're gonna go see Manny, and he's gonna be Chinese, and we're gonna be all like, whoa,
I remember you being Hispanic.
at all. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I mean, not that drastic, but like weird little things, you know? So I think that all of this stuff is possible. But I guess the question, I do, I really do. I'm open to things.
I honestly I think people are just getting stupid.
That too.
I
That
mean,
too.
just because there's certain stuff that's just between the language now and the just society and the kids. And man, I really go after anybody young that's got a good head on their shoulders, and I just want to hug them. I'm like, dude, you're a hard worker. It looks like you're doing good, and you're not stupid. Like, man, I like you, even
Yeah.
instantly. You
No,
know,
for reals. And I feel like that's kind of part of this new timeline when they were talking about it. I'm like, what happened to like, and maybe this is just my oldness, right? Whatever happened, like in this new timeline, nobody wants to work. Like it's weird. You can't find people that genuinely want to like give their time. They don't seem smart, like just in a practical sense. People don't seem smart like they used to. And is that me getting old and perceiving the world differently? Or is this me remembering the old timeline where
or
people,
is it the powers that be? You've seen the cartoon Wally, right?
yes, oh
The
God, I
little
love that.
Okay, so I think the powers that be are really, for whatever end, we're all supposed to be those fat space babies on the
by
chair.
and large,
It's
by
like
and large, people are stupid and dumb
and fat. And if I could
and
drink my
fat
burger
and
all day
lazy.
and
Yes.
whatever, it's like, dude, they're all those fat Wally baby people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. This is a great time if you're a young hustler and you don't listen to anybody's definition of what you should be,
There's
dude.
a
You
wide lane for
kill
you.
it.
There's
You
a
can
wide
kill
lane.
it.
Yes.
Yeah. You
Because
know,
it feels like nobody's out there trying to do that. I mean, in a practical sense, in a real world kind of like going to the market, living your life, selling HVAC systems, doing warranty, whatever your job is, your hustle is, it does feel like most people are not engaged. So I was talking with Glenn the other day, and we were talking about the way that, and this is exactly what you're talking about, that it feels like the mass population of the earth, they get up and they just do what they need to do to get to their job, and they just head down and they just get their stuff done, and they never look past that little, they'd clock out and it's over. They go home and they sit in their chair and eat their TV dinner, and they don't, that there's nothing past that for them. You know what I mean? And I do think that if you're somebody that's inventive and you're a hustler and you can think things through a little bit and be creative, that there is amazing things that you can do in this system of things.
maybe this is the next level of evolution then. The CERN, the UFOs, all of this other stuff is super interesting, whether it's based in reality. It's this is the next evolution of man. We're not going to grow wings. It's just you either evolve to constantly see what's over the next horizon, and that's just in you, and you've been blessed like that. And when you're walking, every once in a while you stretch your back and look up and trip on clouds and whatever, and you're like, oh wow, it's like stuff that, like, did nobody? No, because they're on there or whatever. you
Yeah.
know
And I do think that you're definitely, you're accurate in a lot of ways. I think that our technology dumbed us down. Think about it. Since the invention of the smartphone, okay, I thought about this one time. Prior to this horrible invention, okay,
Kill it.
that I need now, because I can't get to the airport without it. Okay, because I can't get through the check-in because I have the thing on my phone. If they change my gate, I need the notification. And I used to have to memorize people's phone numbers. You know what I mean? Your number, my number, my wife's number, my social security number. We don't know anything anymore. We just ask the phone. Okay, so
This
my
does
daughter,
sound like old man talk now.
no, it does, but
Yeah,
it's real. The
but it's real.
technology made us dumb. I don't know how many times I've seen people where I'll ask them, "What's your phone number?" They go, "Let me check." You don't know your phone number,
No.
dude.
Well, I've done that before too, and it's like with the work, no, but like with the work phone, and then after like telling like, I'm sorry, I never call myself.
Right.
It's the work number. I never call myself. I don't know, but I know it now. But yeah, I get it.
But the technology, your work phone, made it possible for you to not have to know your number, because when you called out now, that number registered on their phone and they put you in their phone, right?
Right.
So the technology again dumbs us down. I don't even have to remember anything. As a matter of fact, I don't have to know anything. I just ask Google.
I remember Noah busting my chops one time at the market because I pulled out the shopping list and a piece of paper and it's like, Dad, your phone has notes and this and that. I was like, ah. and then right afterwards, he was like, hey, that like your card, like how you keep on putting in, he's like, just touch it. Dude.
Yeah, I know.
That's when I was like, oh, I'm getting old.
No, there are cool aspects to the technology, but I do think that it dumbs us down. Okay, so I'm going to ask you the question because we're rounding towards the end now, right? So, of what value is it to a man to look into these things and to examine these things and try and find truths in them? Of what value is that to you and I?
Oh, to me, it's super precious. It just, you have to stay curious in life for everything, whether you're studying the scum in the pond behind your house, or you're staring at the stars, or you're reading into the book and finding the author and what did this guy write and this and that. And at the end of World War One, what did anybody gain? Did they gain anything? And it's just life. And if you don't have one of those intellects that, and I've talked to people too, and they're like, why do you know that? I'm like, because
Right.
I was curious. It's to them, it was like ludicrous. Like, why would you want to know anything about World War II? That was a million years ago. And I go, and you can't have the discussion with them, but by wondering if we're the only thing, the in our galaxy and our universe, if our history really is our history, if our timeline is off because some fools in Switzerland have the galactic hula hoop they won't turn off, whatever it is, or the men in black
Galactic
real,
Julio.
or the men in black aren't real, or
Right.
we got made in a lab by the Anunnaki. I mean, there's nothing we can do about it now. We're here now.
Right. Right.
And, try to make the best of it with what we got. And yeah, it makes me sad that more people aren't curious and don't go like hiking in their local mountains, or don't go to the ocean and every once in a while pull something out. They're like, damn, that little shark was in there the whole time.
Right. Or the sand crabs. I like to catch the little sand crabs and see.
Yeah. No, that's my bait.
Yeah, that's super cool. So I think that it has value to a man for us to look into things and have a curiosity, right? You think about it, a lot of the things that we appreciate now and can't live without, that little explosion underneath the hood of your car, that's because the guy got curious about that and was interested in internal combustion and how to combine that and how to build the transmission to put on, you know what I mean? And now I don't have to walk to Pacoima to go see a job. I can get in my car and turn the AC on. Another curious fella who was all like, Freon, what does that do? What if we move that around? And like, so I think it does benefit us to be curious. I don't think we have to lose our religion, right? To be curious. And I think there are people that are scared that if you look into things, and I think if you're brittle and you're easily led astray, then you shouldn't look, right?
These are the same people that are like severely polarized by politics.
Yes.
And they really believe that whoever you vote for is the dude that's watching out for you. Like, that dude can give a care about you.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like, so yeah, dude, it just, don't let anything pull. How come you can believe in all of that and still find God in everything?
Yes.
Is it here? Is it something tangible?
Yes.
Is it hurting you? Nope. Then it has to be righteous, which is not a word you hear that much anymore. Like things that, I remember we're kind of the last part of like our parents wanted to be hippies, but they were a little too young for that stuff. But like being righteous was like a thing.
Yeah.
And people wanted to be smart. It was like cool to be smart,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, so it's a good thing, and I love talking about this stuff, and I love that level of curiosity, and I like, and I agree with you. You know what I mean? Like, you do have to look for evidence of the divine, and I know for me, I see evidence of God's movements all the time, even down to little practical things. And I think it is the vibration. There's a higher vibration. There is a higher consciousness that's overlooking all of us that is definitely has a fondness for his creation, whatever you believe that is. Like you said, a head of cabbage, whatever it is. And if that helps you to have a barometer to do good and not bad and to be of service, you know what I mean? Then yes, continue to be curious on those things and be better.
Be curious.
Yeah. So yeah, great discussion, man. Thank you, Pops. I love you.
I love you too. It's always a pleasure, my man.
All right. We'll talk soon. And thank you everybody for tuning in, and don't lose your religion.
No.